Hello and welcome to another Tuesday talk with Ruby Reese. Shortly, we'll be joined by Chris from Canines of Cork Dog Photography. As you all know, the with this format, we are very much, trying to keep this informal and chatty. So we often, one second. Throughout this talk. If you do have any concerns about your own situation, your dog, please speak with a certified professional. Hello, Chris. Thank you very much for joining me.
Hey, Kieran. How are you?
I'm very, very well, thank you. Would you do us the pleasure of introducing yourself, please?
Of course. So I'm Chris. I'm like the face behind Canines of Cork. Um, I do dog photography, but for me personally, I think it's a little more than just that. So I would consider myself to be a storyteller. So obviously I photograph dogs, but I take a lot of pride in not just photographing the dogs, but also the humans that own the dogs, and then also the relationship, that they have, with their owners. And other than that, I also do end of life photography, which is, something that is very close to my heart.
Mhm.
And I also do dog sports like IGP and, PSA and all that kind of stuff. So very action packed.
Okay, wow, super broad range there, and I have loads of questions about all those different topics. So, thank you for introducing yourself. Just in case anyone's watching in and doesn't know me yet, I'm Killian from Ruby Reese, and we just set up our dog brand just over a year ago. And you can check out our website, ruby-reese.com, after this chat. So tonight we're going to be talking all about dog photography. It's the first time we've had even touched on this subject on the Tuesday talks. So I suppose what made you interested first and foremost in dog photography in particular?
I think first and foremost for me, it started with photography.
Mhm.
I've always had a camera. When I was younger, I used to take my parents' camera and take photos and videos and all that stuff. And then when I got older, I got my own cameras and started photographing. Photographing dogs was never really something that was like on my agenda at any point. I've always been into like doing landscapes, and I really enjoy architecture, like, photographing, patterns and lines and all that kind of stuff. And it really only started during the pandemic. I shared a house with a coworker of mine, and she had a border collie.
Mhm.
And as you do during the pandemic with a lot of extra time on your hands, I started taking photos of, her dog. And it was something that I really liked.
Yeah.
And then I thought, okay, so maybe there's something here. And then before you know it, I, took a little bit of a deep dive and went down a rabbit hole of dog photography online. And, I did some classes and, courses and whatnot, and discovered that there is maybe not so much in this country, but outside of this country, there is a huge world when it comes to dog photography. And before you know it, then I upgraded my camera. And the way it started was in my local community, down in back then it was down in Macroom. I started to offer, and I believe this is how everyone starts. I started to offer free photo shoots
Mhm.
just to be able to build a portfolio so that I'd be able to have, something to show for basically. And once I did that, I then, created the page and all that stuff. And yeah, the rest is history.
So this is where the Instagram profile Canines of Cork came from. It was kind of a portfolio of local dogs, and this was still kind of a casual thing, right? This was kind of an expression of local dogs, really.
Yeah, this is definitely, it's again, it started out in Macroom
Mhm.
in a really small community. And then, for me, like everything needs a name, like, that that part when you sit in front of a piece of paper or whatever that looks like, and you try and come up with a name for your business.
Yeah.
And there's a few names, that were on the list. And I think Canines of Cork was the one that was like the most catchy. Um, and yeah,
Duck.
that's pretty much it.
Brilliant. And so just to make it clear, because we have following, from definitely from all across the country, if
Yeah.
not further afield. So you don't just focus on Cork, right? You travel around as well
Yeah, I
nowadays.
think I think what started as something that was very local, over time then became almost like this nationwide, project now. Especially ever since I started photographing events, because they're not just in and around Cork, they're like further afield. So now I'd say the majority of the work that I do is still in and around Cork, but it stretches anywhere from County Kerry to County Dublin, and it was even up in County Louth, not too long ago.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and then even, when I travel, outside of the country, like when I was in New York recently, I always make sure to, take some
Mhm.
photos. So yeah.
Brilliant. So it even goes international. And what type? So you mentioned you do all sorts of different types of work. So I know you said it's kind of a passion project of yours, doing kind of end of life photography with older dogs, but you also do really action packed stuff with the sports and probably puppy photography as well, which is probably high energy too. So what's your real favorite type of interactions to capture, or does that depend on the day of the week as well?
I'm not even sure if I can like pin it down to having just one favorite. I think with every type of, photography, like everything is different. The environment is different. The dog is different. There's a huge difference between just taking portraits of a dog versus being at a competition, where dogs really go at it. I was at the AGP national qualifiers, not too long ago. That is as action packed as it gets.
Mhm.
For anyone who hasn't seen that, the dedication that, that these, not just the competitors, not just the handlers, but also the dogs and, the helpers. It's a whole like team effort. Uh, it is pretty impressive to see that, especially in person.
Mhm.
It's definitely something that I love. Um, People who know me also know that I have a real soft spot for senior dogs.
Mhm.
And I think that's where the whole like end of life photography, comes from. Um, it was something that I almost like bumped into by accident. I was in Kerry, and there was a dog with a bandage on one of the legs, and he was limping, and it was a dog that I hadn't, it was a setter, and I hadn't photographed, that particular, breed before. And whenever that happens, if I'm out and about, I usually always try and get a photo if it's
Mhm.
something, unique. And it turned out on that day, it was that dog was, sick, and he was due to be put down on the Monday. This was a Saturday.
Mhm.
And so this was then a spontaneous, end of life session, that I did. I think it was Frodo. It's one of the pinned, photos that I have. And ever since then, this is something that, I continued. It's something that I won't charge for, because it's just, very special. A lot of people don't even know that that service, exists. And I think you can't really put a price on, people being able to make these memories and have something that they can cherish, going forward. So every type of, photography that I do is different. At the same time, that also makes it challenging, and it also makes it unique and interesting.
Mhm. Definitely, absolutely, and even looking through your profile, I mean, there's so many amazing snaps there. So absolutely brilliant work. And is there a particular type of breed that maybe that you like to work with? Are there photogenic breeds and ones that really know how to pose, or?
I'm not sure I wouldn't say there's a specific breed that is super photogenic. What makes my job easier on the day is always a dog, and those are the three things that I point out to the owner basically. If your dog can do a sit, uh, a down, and a stay, it makes my job a hell of a lot easier.
Mhm.
It just means that for people who want to get, these really nice, portraits, you could say posed or staged, whatever you want. But it definitely looks nice. If you want to frame it and put it on the wall, great. That's the end result. I've also worked with dogs that cannot do a sit, cannot do a down, and won't even stay still. And it doesn't mean that I can't get the job done. It just means that it's a little bit different. It might take a little bit longer. And the photos may be a little bit different. It's more spontaneous in the moment. As far as the breeds go, I love a good, German Shepherd or Malinois for
Mhm.
sure. Um, And then I have a huge, soft spot, for bully breeds. There's so much stigma, attached to that.
Mhm.
There's a little bit of a project in the back of my head, like an exhibition that I wanted to do to showcase that and to showcase that they're not, quote unquote, killing machines. In my personal opinion, and I appreciate that, not everyone needs to share that, and that's okay. They're the best, family dogs that you can have. Um, so yeah, just for me, it's something that is very special.
And I think if anyone, I think our following is going to understand that as well. The following that's watching in here, it's preaching to the choir in a way.
Yeah,
It's people that are clued in and know a lot about dogs. Quite
yeah, for
typically
sure.
tend to watch in here. So usually they're the ones with the most open minds
Yeah,
and not
yeah,
blanket saying that any breed is a particularly bad one. I can imagine a lot of the breeds you mentioned as well. A lot of them looking as dangerous dogs, but they're also quite expressive in their faces and their movements quite a lot of the time as well.
yeah, for sure. Like when I go to a competition and I photograph, a Malinois, and there's some of the, I don't know, like there's so many photos that I have of like the bark and hold. And when you see that, and this is one of the competitive aspects, you can really see when the dog means business. When the teeth come out. It's something that if I get that photo with the teeth out, I think that's what everyone wants. And from a handler or competitive point of view, that is something that people in the community really appreciate. At the same time, though, that dog will then go home after the competition and maybe lie down on the couch and have a cuddle. So there's all
Yeah.
these different nuances there. It's there's a little bit more to what a lot of people say or what a lot of people see online, because a lot of these are still family pets. So there's that.
Absolutely, and I suppose it really underlines the point that you made that photography has a lot to do with storytelling as well. Like you
Yeah,
say, if you take a photo of a dog doing that one snarl they have during the day, or you bring them into a growling pose, or get them down on their paws,
yeah,
ready to pounce. It doesn't matter how playful of a mood they're in. You've taken that snapshot and told a
yeah,
story with it, regardless of whether they then decide to roll over on their belly and want belly rubs. It's
yeah,
you've told a different story,
yeah.
right, with the ones. Um, and I suppose, do you have any techniques that you use in photograph, particularly for portraits? I mean, it's more difficult for the sports, but do you have any techniques that you do working with dogs, trying to get them to behave? I know you a well trained dog is best, but do you spend time with the dogs beforehand, trying to get them used to you, relaxing them, or
Y- Yes.
yeah?
So, and this is something that I tell clients, beforehand. There's usually, I usually do a phone call even before we go on the shoot. And the way I describe it is usually that, okay, on the day, so that session usually takes around 60 minutes.
Mhm.
I will say, to be honest, oftentimes it goes way beyond that. I think my average is somewhere between 60 and 90 minutes.
Mhm.
Uh, doesn't mean that I'm gonna, charge extra for that. It's just the way it unfolds on the day. But the way I describe it is usually that we're just gonna take the dog for a walk, and along, the walk, we're just gonna stop, at a few different locations, take a few different, shots. And that also means that when the client, then, goes home and gets their gallery at, whenever that is, they don't get, let's say, 50 photos from the same spot,
Mhm.
so that they get a bit of a variety, basically. And yeah, I think that that's really important.
Okay, so you're not expecting a dog to be sitting in different poses for 60 minutes, which would be completely unrealistic for a lot of dogs. It's more, let's take a couple here, and then it goes on in a normal walk, and then stop again for another couple of snaps.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of, because I remember that you talked about techniques, not per se, but one of the things that I carry around with me all the time is a squeaker.
Mhm.
Um, and then I think also I found that dogs, they're either toy or treat motivated, or sometimes both. But every dog has something that works, for them, in that moment. And it could be, the sound of the squeaker, it could be me making a particular noise, or it could be, the owner. I think at the end of the day, whatever gets the dog to focus in that moment, that's what will work. And I also always say that sometimes it doesn't work on the first
Yeah,
attempt, and
yeah,
that's okay, because at the end of the day, we have to remember that it's just a dog in front of the camera. It's not a human, and the dog doesn't know that they're on a photo shoot.
sure.
They don't care. For all they know, they're just out on a walk. And I think that's important too, to try and remember that. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't work, then sometimes we'll try again. And if it doesn't work, then maybe we'll just continue to try again afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. And you seem to have found some amazing backdrop scenarios as well for a lot of your photos. There's some beautiful scenery there to set the scene in a lot of the pics you have up on Instagram. How do you even find these places? And do you have particular places that you like to go? Is it or coastal walks, kind of things that you like to do with customers, or?
Yeah, I think so. Looking back now, when I started, my main focus was on the dog.
Mhm.
Here's a dog, that's my subject, get the photo, done. And I think, without going into, too much photography, technical detail, but I think the longer that has gone on, the more it's almost like, the more I widen my perspective. And one of those, examples is, I posted a photo yesterday of Dakota, this gorgeous, gorgeous German Shepherd. And we did the session down in Tremor at the beach. And a lot of the times when you go, through my page, especially at the beginning, they're they're very tight shots, of the dogs. And there's some sort of background there, but you can't really make out what that is. And I think over time, that widened, a little bit more. And one of the things that I really, really enjoy as of late is to be able to show a dog not just on its own, but also, in the environment. And I think that particular, photo of Dakota at the beach with the nice, it was during, blue hour. That's why everything is, so blue, with the ocean, everything in the background. It's almost like a landscape type of photography, but the dog is in there. Um, and it's something that I really enjoy. Beaches are always, my favorites. Um, and then there are some, trails or, forests. I have some go-to spots that I know will always work. Tremor definitely being one of them. But at the end of the day, it always depends on, the client. And sometimes they have, a particular location, and that might be really important for them. It may have some, historical or emotional significance, with their dogs. And then we'll talk about it. And at the end of the day, I can make any location work.
Mhm. And I guess it comes down to the weather as well, because Irish weather being Irish
Oh
weather, it's
God.
unpredictable.
It's the worst. I haven't, I don't think I've canceled a shoot yet because of weather. I've had some, where, I've had a little bit of rain. I certainly had my fair share of competitions where I sat in the pouring rain. That's a whole different story because, competitions, they go ahead no matter what.
Mhm.
But so far I've been, touch wood, I've been really lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. And we mentioned quite a bit about social media. So would you say social media has had a big impact on your work, but also in general on kind of dog photography, kind of on a larger scale? Do you think that has had a big impact?
I think for me it's a bit of a mix. I I definitely get, referrals and clients based on, what I post online, 100%. I still get, the referrals from, people who have seen, photos of their friends, for example, and that may have been, online or in person, whatever. But I think overall, yeah, yeah, like definitely when there's some, and I think everyone in the industry, does that. For me, as a photographer, I have, other, not just dog, but in general photographers that I follow. There's a few of my, favorite photographers, over in the States and over in Canada, and then there are some that even branch out into, like on more online, content and education, YouTube, and what have you. So I think, the industry, as a whole, yes, it's definitely been, uplifted by social media and YouTube and all that kind of stuff. The fact that, content is readily available pretty much everywhere these days.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I suppose, like, I mean, nobody goes or very few people pick up the golden pages anymore and start looking for businesses.
I doubt it.
It's not the way that the world works. And I think anyone, even with Ruby Reese, with our own business, we also get an awful lot of business through social
Yeah.
media. So
Yeah.
it's obvious that such a visual industry would also be hugely impacted. Even the fact that a lot of photos are now taken in portrait mode and not horizontal. That the format has been
It's a
has
whole
been
different,
dragged.
it's a whole different conversation.
A whole different conversation. Yeah, absolutely. Um, and I suppose, like, are talking about that as well. You mentioned colleagues in the US. Do you think dog photography in Ireland is at a similar level to where other countries are, or do you think there's more popularity and demand in countries like the States or like continental Europe, or is there? Can you even compare?
So again, this is based on my own personal experience. I feel it's different.
Hmm.
And so, what I noticed anytime, I go over to the States, for example, I find that people over there they're a lot more willing to pay for services.
Hmm.
And that includes, photos of their dogs. And even outside of, if you want to take out dog photography, take photography in general, um, even getting, family photos done, seasonal photos. It's a massive, massive, thing, over there. And I think there may be a lot more value, being put on, making these memories and, having these moments, that you can cherish afterwards, even
Hmm.
if it's seasonal, seeing your kids grow up, seeing your dogs grow up. Um, People are a lot more willing, to pay for these services and not just pay, but also, pay a premium. Um, I could easily charge, 2 to 3 times what I charge now in different countries,
Hmm.
and people will pay for that. Um, Over here, I found that over time, it's been a little bit more challenging, um, because I think there's a certain line when it comes to pricing, and maybe that is something that you have experienced with too. Um, and I don't know, what that is linked to, if that's linked to the economy or, the recession or what have you. But I think once you cross a certain threshold, uh, and again, this is based on my own personal experience, the demand, it drops a little bit. And, you know, if there is, a special that I'll, put out, yes, definitely people will jump on that. Um, but not everyone, has the money and the resources to, in my case, pay 125 euro for a photo shoot.
Yeah, and I think you made a really good point there. I think maybe the history of dogs in Ireland has a lot to do with it. Not
Yeah,
so much what where we're at today, because I think we're definitely at a turning point. Um, let's look at it more broadly. With dog friendly cafes, restaurants allowing, or certain restaurants allowing
yeah,
dogs to attend, even indoors. Hotels becoming more accepting. I think I think there's definitely change on the horizon, or definitely happening around us.
yeah,
Um, and I think from talking to people over the last couple of weeks on this very format, we I've kind of discovered that Ireland used to be a country where dogs were very much, let loose on the farm, and maybe they had a
yeah,
job, or maybe they didn't, but they definitely weren't well kept enough to take into a
yeah,
restaurant. They weren't well
yeah,
behaved enough or well trained enough to bring to a cafe. So they probably wouldn't have been able to, or if they were able to sit maybe for a photo, but would people have valued that as much?
yeah,
And would people have been able to find them around the farm quickly enough to get a
yeah.
photo with a
I think that's a
photographer?
really valid point.
Mhm. So I think now people are deaf. Dogs have an elevated status in quite a lot
Yeah,
of Irish families, and this is obviously going to have an impact for us
yeah,
all. I think a lot of Irish dog families now would certainly appreciate the type of work that you do, and I suppose even in our day to day taking photographs. So, do you have any advice for people taking home photography? Because a lot of us do a lot of things wrong. In taking our daily photos of our dogs. I mean, the number one thing that I have noticed, and I'm guilty of it as well, is taking a top down photo of my dog, because she's
yeah.
always below.
Um, I'm a huge fan of trying to avoid the rights and wrongs.
Hmm.
I think with every art form, like photography, I'm not sure if there is a right and a wrong way. What I do believe is that in certain situations, there might be a different way. It might not
Hmm.
necessarily be a better way, but there's definitely different ways and different approaches. Even I will take top-down photos.
Yeah,
If I want to get, a close-up of the dog's face, for example, I will shoot that top down because it's the
sure.
best, angle basically. So there isn't really anything wrong with that per se.
Hmm.
But I will say that if you have a dog sitting in front of you, for example, one of the things that every dog photographer will probably second is that you want to make sure that because they're not on your level, you want
Hmm.
to make sure that you get down onto their level. It's also the reason why if I there's one of the typical photos that I do is if your dog can give the paw, I will ask my client to, in an ideal situation, get down on one knee onto the dog's level and then take that photo to make sure that they're both on the same level. And the
Hmm.
same thing goes with a sit or a down. The lower you can get down to the ground to show that perspective that the dog can see, I think the more authentic that gets. Again, it's nothing wrong with taking these top down shots, but I think if you take down these if you take these top down shots, also try a little bit more variety and try one from a little bit of a lower angle and see if that makes a difference. As far as the technicality of photography is concerned, we could be here all day talking about all different technical aspects and stuff. That's a whole different
Sure.
conversation.
Yeah, yeah. That's understandable. I mean, there's huge volumes of books that could help people out there. No, it's brilliant, and I really really appreciate you coming on and talking about how you tell stories with dogs, and all the different formats of photography that you do. Guys, I highly recommend anyone watching in to go over and check out Chris's Instagram page. It's at Canines of Cork. You also have a website. Is it caninesofcork.com?
Yeah.
So those are brilliant places. I'm guessing on the website is the best place as well to get in touch with you for potential bookings, etc.
The best way to contact me is actually Instagram. But
Instagram.
the website has, all my pricing and all my, products and the booking options. So for those folks that are looking to, book a shoot, the website is basically the way to go, and all the information is there. And then if anyone has any more questions afterwards, they can just, contact my page.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing, Chris. It's been an absolute pleasure. Look forward to seeing a lot more of your photography over the next months and hopefully years. And thank you once again, and have a great evening.
I really appreciate you having me, Kieran.
No problem at all. Well, thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Take care.